Good evening and welcome to another evening here in the loft. Welcome everybody here in the loft, everybody there in the Zoom room, everybody out there watching this on the YouTube channel for another Spiritual Science Loft Talk. And tonight we're going to be getting into biogeometry, which is very exciting because this is actually the 50th anniversary of biogeometry. It's being celebrated with the release of Dr. Karim's new book, his third book, called Hidden Reality, the Biogeometry Physics of Quality. And yeah, hidden reality, what's that about? Is there a hidden reality? Apparently science has a hard time discovering that, to prove that there is or isn't some sort of hidden reality. But with spiritual science, we're talking about a different approach to the phenomenon of life. And that's why these talks are about spiritual science. In fact, this series of talks that I've been doing for several years is called Spiritual Science as Social Activism. That is a form of social activism to bring out the hidden reality. Or you could call it social hacktivism, so we can hack in to the invisible reality. In fact, the full name of the YouTube channel, where you can find all the past videos, is called Spiritual Science as Social Activism and Self-Initiation, because that's what it's about these days, is to take knowledge and to self-initiate or self-activate ourselves. And what we're going to be getting into tonight with biogeometry is aspects of this new science that helps to illuminate the mystery wisdom of ancient Egypt. In a word, I want to look at what the Egyptians referred to as heka. Heka refers to magic. And strictly speaking, what was going on in ancient Egypt wasn't a religion as we think of it today, in terms of Judeo-Christian Islamic religions or Buddhist religions as a kind of institutionalized, formal, denominational religion. But they really just believed in the magic of life, the magic that was present everywhere, and that was the way they intended to live. And we can see that in studying them. Now, this idea of heka, how is it that they came to bring it to such a high level within their culture? And it really boils down to three different things. First of all, there was a deep observation of nature, that the Egyptians were very much interested in observing the external realm, everything from astronomy to anatomy, and even the observation of the human itself, human nature. And you could see that in their observation of nature, they, for example, had a keen observation of animals. They were interested in the beetle kingdom and the bee kingdom and cats. They all had different characteristics that actually connected them to the magic of life, the heka of life. And even their gods were personified through animals. We know that Horus was personified as a falcon, and Thoth as an ibis, and Isis as a cow, Osiris as a bull, Anubis as a jackal. So they're very connected to nature and the animal kingdom, plant kingdom, and so forth. The second thing that allowed them to take their practices of magic to a high level was that they really amassed quite a corpus of esoteric or secret teachings that were kept by the priesthood. They were secret teachings that only people that were part of the initiated priesthood would be party to. But they had quite a deep understanding of spiritual science and vibrational science. And of course, this grew out of their observations of nature. They observed the external realm, and we'll talk about this in a minute, on how our approach to the external realm can really enliven our inner capacities, our inner spiritual capacities to know. Then the third thing that really informed their ability to develop very high practices was their initiation rituals, that they put their knowledge into practice through rituals which were more than just religious show of things, but really had the power to activate people that were involved in them, that they were activation rituals, not just initiation rituals. And through that, they were able to go beyond their humanness. They were able to extend their human nature via their spiritual nature to a greater connection with the spiritual world and the beings of the spiritual world, which are known as the netters. The netters are what the Egyptians regarded as the spiritual beings that were behind nature, that they were the things that were behind the source impulses, and you could say even the archetypes that then came into form in nature. The netters, the netter beings, that they had a living relationship with these higher beings, that the gods personified as animals were not just religious icons, but were portals through which they sought and gained guidance. So, as I mentioned, the first teaching I gave back in January was called Ancient Egypt Arising and Your Arising. But this doesn't mean that we have to go back to Egypt or go back to the ways of the ancient Egyptians and to follow their rituals of initiation. No, not at all. Matter of fact, I'm not going to Egypt next fall because I want to learn to live like the ancient Egyptians did, because we've moved on. And I'm not even going there to just learn about the pyramids, because as magnificent as the pyramids are at, there has been a spiritual evolution of things, and so our reliance on these external forms is not the same as what they were back then. So really why I'm going to ancient Egypt and to look at the things there, including the pyramids, is to learn more about myself. Because as Hermes Trismegistus said, that Earth is a mirror of the heavens, and what the ancient Egyptians were doing at that time was a mirroring, a reflection of where their consciousness was at, albeit to a very high degree. But now we need to go to an even higher degree ourselves in being spiritual beings, having a human experience in the 20th century. 21st century, excuse me. I'm a little behind the times. So the reason I'm going is because I'm interested in heka as well. I am interested in these so-called magical powers, but bringing them into modern living and to live in maat. Live in maat, as the Egyptians called it. What is maat? Maat refers to the cosmic order or the cosmic harmony of things. To live in maat, and this is what they sought, was to live in harmony with Earth and the heavens. And this explains the amount of effort that went into building their edifices with such precision, such mathematical precision, and so forth. Incidentally, Maat, this cosmic order, is also personified as a god, actually a goddess. The one with the feather is called Maat, and she is the one that is present at the weighing of the heart, with the feather on one scale and the heart on the other, to see how light your heart is at the time of your death. And that's something we should all aspire to, is that when we lift off from earth, take our last breath, that our heart is not only as light as a feather, it's even lighter than a feather. It's so light, it's etherically light. So this was part of their pursuit in to manifest the heka, the magical powers, was to live in maat, to live with the cosmic order, as opposed to Isfet. Isfet was another god, really the god of chaos. If you have order, you have to have its opposite. In the realm of duality, there's always polar opposites. And so Isfet was the Egyptian god of chaos, who later became Seth, who was the brother of Horus and son of Osiris and Isis. And then Seth later became Satan in the Judeo-Christian Islamic religion. So Satan is kind of the descendant of this Isfet, the god of chaos. Now, of course, Satan today, you start talking about Satan, people are going to roll their eyes at you. You know, like this idea of there being Satan, some satanic force, some sort of devil, seems pretty outdated for most moderns. But when you step back and think about it, you know, we are trying to live in order and with the cosmic harmony. And so there is a force, there is a living force that opposes that. That's always trying to break things down and throw things into chaos, throw things into disorder. So, in fact, where we're going in this talk tonight on biogeometry is to utilize this lost ancient Egyptian knowledge that's been rediscovered, reborn, reinvented through this modern spiritual science of biogeometry to counter the forces of disharmony and disorganization, and that leads to chaos and a lot of the issues going on in the world today. So the reason I like the idea of there being a personification of these forces is because then we can start to live into the idea that they're living forces and not just dead mechanical things. So yeah, tonight we're going to focus on the positive powers to help with these troubling issues of our planet through biogeometry. So what is biogeometry? Well, let's just look at the word etymologically. You've got the word bio and geometry. So it's kind of a big question, you know, when you bring the word bio, something that's life, and geometry, which we don't normally consider something living. Does geometry support life? Does geometry produce life? Well, we know that geometry can house life. Geometry houses life. You have to have form in which life can live. Like here in my loft, I have this geometric form of the loft that houses the life that goes on here. Same with your body. You've got a physical form that houses the life of you. So yeah, we're starting to go down this rabbit hole with the question, can forms, can shapes, can angles, can numbers, can proportion, and things like this produce life, support life? Can something that seems mechanical and lifeless actually produce something organical, something that is alive and flourishing and abundant? Now science really troubles, this is really the biggest question that science wrestles with, is how can something that is dead and lifeless produce something alive? And of course they've kind of come up with the Kant-Laplace hypothesis about the birth of our solar system. It was just dust and gas and so forth that came together and somehow life appeared here in our solar system. And science puts a lot of effort into working with chemicals. They figure chemicals is that middle medium that is the answer. It's a solution to biological issues and questions. But Rudolf Steiner, just quote him here in passing, in the 1920s, he put this question out to people. He said, is the earth a mechanism or an organism? And what do you think? What do you think? Is Earth a mechanical a mechanism, or is it a living organism? And further on in this lecture he gave in the 1920s, he says that the lifeless is preceded by the living, that it's out of living things that the lifeless manifested, rather than the other way around, that something lifeless produced something living. And we'll look at that more closely in a minute here. But let's look at this other word, geometry. Geometry means, it's made up of two words. You've got geo, which means earth, and metry, which means measurement. So, or measure. The measure of the earth. That's what geometry literally means. And that's an interesting indication, because by looking at the earth, which is a physical form, it's a geometric form, it's a sphere, it can tell us, if we observe it correctly, it can tell us something about the forming processes of the universe in which it has been formed. Right? We have this geometry, the measurement of the earth, the form of the earth has been born within the universe, and it can tell us something about the forming processes of the universe, or what biogeometry refers to as nature's forming processes. And I like to refer to the universe actually as the swampiverse. It's not just a mechanical thing, it's a living thing, it's a swampiverse. And we know that swamps breed living forms. Go to your local swamp and you'll see that it's breeding life forms, living forms. It's also destroying and decaying forms. Things break down in the swamp and decay. So, in fact, the universe, or the swampiverse, is like a huge metabolic activity where some things are being bred into an existing form, like us, and other things are being broken down. So that's within that metabolic function. There's anabolic. Anabolic means built up, and catabolic means being broken down. And this is what we can observe taking place in the universe as nature's forming processes. So we've gone to the big picture here in order to understand ourselves and the earth, the big picture being the universe. And then we can now ask ourselves, what is the fundamental geometric form or signature of the swampiverse? What is its fundamental geometric form or movement? Yes, the spiral. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, the spiral, this vortexing motion, is the fundamental signature, you could call it, of the swampiverse. We see it in solar systems, we see it in galaxies, we see it in black holes, we see it on Earth, we see it mirrored on Earth in whirlpools and tornadoes. You see it in your sink, and you see it even in your toilet. This is the fundamental movement, the fundamental geometric movement of the universe, of which everything else is, sorry to use the expression, a spin-off. And what is the cause of a spiral? Well, in the universe, there's duality, right? That's how the universe, the one turning, that's what universe means, is one turning, functions on duality. Counter forces, opposing forces, but complementary forces that work together. So a spiral is really caused by something moving out from a center and encountering an opposing force that makes it turn back. But then it has its original impulse that wants to move out from the center, and then there's something coming from the periphery that pushes it back. And through this dualistic dynamic gives birth to spirals, a spiral movement, a swirling, vortexing movement. So that's really it in a nutshell. Quite simple if you think about it, how things want to move out from one point to expand, and there's a counter force that pushes it back, and this breathing brings this dance of the vortex. And this sort of movement in the heavens is again mirrored on the earth, and we can see this when there are two underground crossings, flows of water underground, of which there's lots all over the earth. There's lots on the surface of the earth, but there's lots of flows under the surface of the earth. And just think of it, when you have two streams coming together, they're going to meet and bring about a swirling movement, and maybe not just of the water itself, but the meeting of water and the moving past each other is going to create an energetic vortex, something on another plane of nature, which we'll be talking about in a moment when we get into planes of nature. But the movement of physical things can give rise to energetic movement, and that's a big key when we start to look at the powers that biogeometry is disclosing to us. Excuse me. Yes, and the ancients were aware of these sorts of movements, these sorts of flows, and they sometimes referred to them as ley lines, and they had different ways of dowsing to locate these vortex centers. And in fact, I learned how to do this when I was a student with the Clairvision School of Meditation, and working with coat hangers to dowse ley lines in the earth. And I'm going to give you a little picture of this. Hold on a second. Here we go. This is from a book called Awakening the Third Eye, from the Clairvision School of Meditation. This book's written by Samuel Sagan, who was the head of the school, and an excellent manual, one of the manuals I use in the spiritual boot camp that I run. And this is one of the chapters that talks about working with dowsing to locate these crossings of energy flows or water flows or ley lines using coat hangers. In this diagram you can see this person using coat hangers that have been cut and held at right angles, and when you cross a crossing of energy, the two coat hangers that are pointing straight forward will cross. You hold them loosely in your hands, or you can sometimes have a little tube on the coat hanger, so it's just hanging loosely in the tube. But if you do this with some sensitivity, you'll see that the coat hangers actually turn in. They'll swing, or they might swing out, because they encounter denser energy than when you're just moving forward. All of a sudden they hit a denser energy, and that indicates there's something there. And yeah, here's another picture, the hands holding them. Just wanted to give you a quick look at this if you wish to go further in this sort of study. Here's the cover of the book. I've got a PDF version of it, Awakening the Third Eye. And the reason why this is important, and I pointed out, is these crossings of energy, which can be in a lot of different places. They're more prevalent than people realize, especially when you start looking at the whole concept of Earth energy grid. They're laid out actually in a matrix, energetic matrix around the Earth. Is that they're a double-edged sword, because they can be both beneficial and they can be detrimental. They can be detrimental if you're unconscious and unaware of their presence, and you are habitually sitting, working, sleeping, meditating on this spot day after day after day. It can disturb your energy field and lead to some sort of illness on the physical level, or even emotional, mental level. On the other hand, if you work with them consciously, as the ancients did, they can be used as power spots. And they were used as power spots. They were dowsed out, they were discovered, and they were built upon for places of sacred work, initiation activities, activation, and so forth. And sometimes they even were able to connect these power spots between different sacred centers and create a linkage over a continent to amplify their energies, amplifying the subtle energies and vibrations that they offered. Why? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Why? Well, as we just pointed out, these crossings create vortex movement. Where else is there vortex movement? In the sky, in the heavens. So by tuning in to these power spots on the Earth, it was a way to tune in to the power of the universe, the cosmic intelligence, and to use that to elevate consciousness. They would do initiation practices, meditation practices, and so forth on these spots, where the leaders, the future leaders of the society, would be initiated and activated to a higher state of consciousness, so they could guide society from a place of higher wisdom, from a place of connection with the cosmic intelligence and the spiritual world and the spiritual beings and the guides, so forth, so that society could be guided well and it would have greater longevity, that a society would endure for a long time, which is exactly what we see with the Egyptian dynasties, that they went on for millennia. That's quite impressive compared to anything we've seen since then. Nothing has existed as long as the dynastic period of ancient Egypt, and we don't even know how far back it goes, because for the most part Egyptologists count the age of Egypt from the beginning of recorded dynasties, and there's not much information about what went on before that, but it appears that there's been a real rolling out of something from even before that. Why? Because of the very thing that we're speaking of here. So the ancients were aware of the existence of these spots, or these centers, and how to work with them with consciousness. And of course, Hermes Trismegistus, who is considered the father of ancient Egyptian alchemy, is quoted to have said that God is a circle whose center is everywhere and periphery nowhere. So embedded in that kind of Egyptian cone, that God is a circle whose center is everywhere and periphery nowhere, is to suggest that we can really find center spots everywhere and amplify their energies. We don't have to necessarily go to the Giza Plateau, but I know, there's an amplification of energy there that exists to this day. But we can take that knowledge that they have and now bring it into our modern lives. But before we do that, I want to just give a little historical view of the evolution of sacred power spots. Here's a standing stone known as a menhir. These are found all over the planet, that the ancients had this wisdom that you stand up something into this vertical position and it amplifies the energy of that spot. It's like an antenna that can amplify the earth energies, increase the connection with the cosmic energies, and be of benefit to everything and all that's around. Biological. So it's a benefit to the crops, the livestock, the humans, and ultimately enhances the consciousness of people that are connecting to this sort of thing. And of course, this evolved into these structures called obelisks that were, again, part of the Egyptian development of stone structures. This one's covered with hieroglyphs. So it's, well, we'll talk about hieroglyphs in a moment, but they would add to the vertical structure, which of course would be granite, would be a heavy granite structure. They weren't working with soft limestone. For these things, they would get granite from the south part of Egypt in Aswan, and ship it by boat to other parts of Egypt. So the composition of it was important. The shape of it's important. And so is the writing. The shapes on the shape, you could say, is also important. And here's a minaret of the Persian origin. Again, a vertical tower. Now we get into the dolmens. This is where it gets interesting, where they began to erect these standing stones and then put a flat stone over top, which creates something of a gate for energy to flow through. And, or you could even think of it as a cave, that these could have been used as a kind of structure in which people would meditate or do initiatory practices. And yeah, the interesting thing about having something over top is that it creates an enclosure, but it also affects the energetic structure of whatever human is in there. And I'll now refer back to what we did last month in the evening of Egyptian magicians. If you saw that we had a person sitting in a chair and 4 people standing around who put their 2 hands above the head of the human sitting in the chair. Did that for just a minute or 2, and then took their hands away and then lifted the person. And lo and behold, the person was found to be lighter than when they tried to lift the person before putting the hands above the head. And I gave something of an explanation about that, how there is energetic structure above the human physical head, that these hands would actually amplify the energetic structure. You could call it the etheric structure, the etheric body, and amplified the etheric aspect of the human, which is the levity body, as opposed to the physical body, which is the physical body, which is the gravity body. So what we did was amplify the forces of levity in the human being, in the human organism, which allowed the levity to have more sway and actually made them lighter. It drew out those etheric levity forces. Similarly, with this dolmen, a person was sitting there, this granite piece above it would affect their etheric body, amplifying etheric forces. The granite and all of that would increase the electric charge. And so their etheric body would be drawn out of their physical body, so they'd be high. It would actually get them high. And it would allow them access to higher planes of nature, higher worlds and whatnot. So there's a little piece on the dolmens, which we'll look at a bit further on. Here's another example. It's a gateway of energy that, amplifies higher aspects. Here's Stonehenge. You're all probably familiar with that. Very sophisticated evolution of the dolmen and creating sacred power spots or amplifying sacred power spots. Then there's also the mound builders, where the building of mounds to again heighten the amplification of the antenna-ness of the power spot. Here's other examples, similar shape. And then, of course, we arrive at the beautiful, unparalleled Great Giza Pyramid that shows the interior of the King's Chamber, of Khufu's pyramid. And so here's the King's Chamber. Whoops. Whoa. There we are. Just trying to zoom in a bit. Oops. So there's the King's Chamber, and you can see it located here in the heart of the Great Giza Pyramid. And above the King's Chamber, you can see kind of there. Wow. What does that look like? A dolmen. Thank you. A very sophisticated dolmen. So the early dolmens that were just some rocks with the plate over top evolved to a very high degree in the Great Giza Pyramid, where in this initiation chamber, you've got 5 plates above the chamber itself to amplify the connection with the cosmos, so that there could be a mirroring of the heavens upon earth through the presence of the human being. And this is key. This is key to it all. And this is why the book I'm working on is called The Key to the Great Living Pyramid of Giza, is that the human is the key. The human presence is really ultimately the antenna that stands between Earth and the living cosmos that allowed this pyramid to virtually be alive with a consciousness in it. And the human was like a key in the slot that turned the whole thing on. So I thought that was really interesting to see the evolution of working with power spots on the Earth. Now, when there was a time when people from Greece took an interest in Egypt, so people like Plato, Pythagoras, and many others went to Egypt and lived in Egypt for years to absorb this knowledge, to absorb this wisdom, to in fact be initiated into their esoteric secrets through some sort of esoteric school that they would be participating in with the priests. But one of the things about initiation is that you're sworn to secrecy, even sworn to keep things secret or else to die. Secrecy upon death. And so a lot of what was brought back to Greece from Egypt through these great teachers like Plato and Pythagoras was veiled. It had to be veiled in their teachings. They couldn't fully disclose the secrets. So through that, a lot of that knowledge actually became lost. It didn't continue in the same way, the same level of heka that the Egyptians had acquired. And in fact, it started to become materialized. It became lost and materialized. And, that's kind of what the march of time has been like through the ages, where things are more and more materialized and less of a spiritual nature, not understood in a spiritual way. And that's partly because of the swing of the pendulum through time. And Rudolf Steiner talks about this. He says, you can't concentrate on everything at once. With a somewhat finite consciousness, you cannot hold everything in consciousness at the same time. So the pendulum has swung where we have become more materialistic. We are more focused on the material world. We are doing that for good reason as well, because we're learning how to transform physical things. Quite literally, we transform sand and silica into microchips, which is incredibly amazing. It's in some ways as amazing as the heka that the Egyptians were tapping into. But it does show how materialistic we have become in our focus of things. And there is a danger in that. And the pendulum needs to swing again. And that's why Dr. Karim came up with his first book when he was developing biogeometry and called it Back to a Future for Mankind. This is his seminal work on biogeometry, which came out, I guess, almost 50 years ago. And now on the 50th anniversary, he's come out with this book I've shown you already, Hidden Reality. And through this, there's a reacquisition of lost knowledge, of lost mystery wisdom. And people are getting more and more ready to receive this sort of knowledge. We've kind of gone to a very extreme degree into materialism, and people intuitively know that there needs to be a spiritual side as well to maintain the balance. And so there's awakening to this, and awakening to the powers that are on other levels that can be beneficial to our physical well-being, our biological nature, and of the planet. So there's a lot of interest, you might notice, in YouTube and different books on the lost technologies of the ancients, of ancient Egypt and whatnot. But I must add, even some of those, like with Christopher Dunn and his work on lost technologies, he being an engineer, a mechanical engineer, he's still looking at things from a mechanical mindset. The lost technologies he's looking for is like saws and pumps and things like that of a physical nature. But biogeometry is not talking about that kind of lost technology. It's really talking more about the heka, the so-called magical use of powers beyond the physical. So with that, now I want to take you to another slide. Share screen. Turn on the TV. And here we're looking at the 7 planes of nature as described by Dr. Karim, the founder of biogeometry. But this is also found in many other cosmologies, that there's different planes of nature, different names, maybe different numbers. It's all on how you cut the pie. But here he's showing at the top is the divine plane, then the spiritual world, then the causal plane or activity of things. Then there's the mental plane, where we can actually think and appropriate information about all the planes. Then there's the astral plane, where there is the actual impulses that carry out causation and creation and basically everything that is then embodied, or one could say extended into embodiment through the vital, the life force, the etheric plane, and then ultimately the physical plane of things. So, our modern Western science, thinks that things move from the ground up, from the physical ground up. And actually, they think that the ground is all there is, that the physical ground is the only plane, and that somehow out of the physical, dead, lifeless layer of things, living things arose. They can't explain how, but that's their theory, and they're sticking to it. And they can't detect these other planes of nature. So, the current tech cannot detect it. So within their paradigm, it doesn't exist. Although everyone, everywhere, in all time before, up till about 200, 300, 400 years ago, believed there was other planes of existence, that there was planes beyond the physical plane, and there was life beyond death. So it's only now in recent times that we have this kind of constricted, contracted, deconstructed view of things, where there's just the ground and somehow life arises out of that. But in this paradigm here, the 7 planes of nature, the movement's in the opposite direction. It's a top-down movement. That things move originating from the divine plane through the spiritual, the causal, mental, astral, etheric, and that the physical is actually at the end of the road. That the physical form is at the end of the road of nature's forming process. That nature works on all these different planes, and the physical plane is the end of the road, and really just one step from death and decay and fossilization. So there's the forming process that's working on these other planes of nature that bring things into existence. Things come from an unmanifest, divine, spiritual state that's not discernible by the physical senses of the physical body, but is the source of the forms or the archetypes that ultimately come into form or come into existence. And I just want to take a moment to look at this word existence, because it's an interesting word, and I learned about its etymology from my teacher Samuel Sagan, again in his book Awakening the Third Eye, where he says that the word existence, from the Latin, ex means out, and sistere means to take a position. So it means to come out or to exit from the spiritual space and then take a position or an existence temporarily in the physical space that we experience between the birth of something and the death of it. Existence is between the birth and the death. So existence is exiting out. Ex sistere is to come out and take a stand in the space, exiting out of a different space. So that's a really cool way to look at things that come into form. They're coming from somewhere else into existence. So what can we learn about this forming process and bringing things into existence? Well, if we look around at what is in existence and you boil it down, it really is things that have a shape, right? They have a form that has a shape. They have patterns, they have colors, they have angles. And these things exist whether the human is here or not. But these things exist in the mineral world, the plant world, the animal world. These things exist on these levels. But then the human has come into existence, come into physical existence to join the forms in the mineral, in the plant, and the animal. We have also exited out from some space into existence. And in doing that, we've acquired physical senses. That's part of our form. We have eyes, we have ears, nose, mouth, and touch. That gives us these physical senses to navigate what? The physical realm, right? Now, what about the other planes of nature? How do we navigate them? That's the big question here tonight. How do we navigate? How do we access these other 6 planes of nature? Do we have to go to Egypt and get initiated in a pyramid? Well, maybe. I'm going to go over there. We'll see what happens to me. But there's other ways as well, even more modern ways, you could say, such as the practices that are taught by Rudolf Steiner in this book called How to Know Higher Worlds, or you could say How to Know Higher Planes of Nature. And at the top, it's a modern path of initiation. In this, he's not advocating going and getting initiated in pyramids or temples. He's not even saying, do pranayamas, asanas, mudras, yantras, mantras, or any of that. In his path of modern initiation, he really does begin with the physical senses. To work with what you've got already, stay grounded in the physical body, and use your powers of observation, which the Egyptians did as well. As I mentioned in the beginning, they observed nature, and it taught them a lot. And so in Steiner's book of Higher Worlds, he gives exercises on observing nature, to observe plants that are living and growing and thriving and feel into that, and to observe plants that are dying, decaying, and so forth, to feel into that. And those sorts of exercises through the physical senses, but then awaken higher senses within us, to awaken what he calls subtle organs of soul and spirit, that then give us access and knowledge of higher worlds beyond the physical. Very exciting. So, you might consider getting this book. This is another text I use in the spiritual bootcamp training, and we go through it together to acquire the attitudes that he talks about, but also the practices where you enter into the phenomenon of the physical world as a spiritual practice to awaken higher capacities of soul and spirit. So we're really looking for those gateways within ourself, just as the ancients worked with the gateways of dolmens and chambers and whatnot. We're looking for gateways that allow access to the higher planes. And with that, I want to start to wind down a little bit by talking about an aspect of biogeometry. And I certainly can't go into the whole thing in this introductory talk. I'm just really introducing the idea of biogeometry as a study, and I studied it myself. I started back in around 2010 and worked with a teacher, Dr. Robert Gilbert, down in Asheville, North Carolina. I went down there a couple times to do the foundation training and also the advanced training. And then he came to Toronto after that, and I repeated the basic training. Now it's all online, of course. We have COVID to thank for that. So many courses now are available online, including the biogeometry training. And highly recommend it, doing it with Dr. Robert Gilbert. I think he's one of the best teachers on the planet. Very good teacher, very knowledgeable, not only about biogeometry. He was actually a student of clear vision before that. And he knows so much about all the different spiritual traditions and practices, a real wealth of knowledge. So, yeah, you might consider getting one of the books. Any one of the books is great. You could get Dr. Cream's first book or the more recent one, which is great because it'll take you from very basic ideas, but into very advanced knowledge as well. So you get the full spectrum from A to Z with these books. His second book is called Biosignatures, or technically it's called Biogeometry Signatures, harmonizing the body's subtle energy. Sorry, harmonizing the body's subtle energy exchange with the environment. And this is what we're talking about, is the exchange, the access between ourselves and what's outside of ourselves, so that we can be a mirror of heaven, beneficial forces and energies of heaven. And to do that, we need portals of access. And that's what biosignatures are. Biosignatures are a way to open up portals to particular qualities of energy. And that, I'll just repeat that word quality, because that's the thing that really characterizes biogeometry. It's a physics of quality. Most of our science is Newtonian, which is all about quantity, how big something is, how much it weighs, its proportions. It's, all the stuff that you can numerically, quantify. Give me the data, right? But this is the other side of the coin. It's connected to the quantifiable things, but it's about the qualities of energy that can be discerned, can be accessed, can be felt. And at the end of the day, that's what's important, is the quality of energy. It's like with this computer, you can quantify how powerful the CPU is and the speed of this and the size of that. You can know the numbers on that. But what's most important is the quality of how it works and the transmission of it. So that's the other side of the coin that's often disregarded in science. But in biogeometry, that's what it's aiming at, is to be able to test and transform the quality of energy. And biosignatures is one aspect of biogeometry that gives you power to do that. So, what is a biosignature? It's a shape. It's a form. You can see examples of biosignatures on the cover of this book. And each one of these has a different quality of energy, right? Every shape has a different quality. And we said already, how shape or form holds life. It supports life. The shape of this room supports the life that goes on in it. The shape of your body supports the life that's in it. If you're doing a yoga asana, the shape that you're holding is going to direct energy in a certain way. And so it's going to have a certain quality of energy. So biosignatures is what Dr. Cream refers to as shaped caused waves. In fact, there's shape caused waves everywhere. Everything is producing shape caused waves. But with biosignatures, you are working with a shape that has a particular quality that's targeting a certain thing. So what I'm going to look at in this last little bit here is the biosignature for the heart. But before we do that, I do want to speak a little bit about how you test qualities of things. And I can only do this briefly, and I'm going to have to get my pendulum to do that. And what does this pendulum look like? Kind of looks like a standing stone, doesn't it? Right? It's this, the straight object, vertical object, that's kind of antenna-like, the way the standing stones were from back in antiquity. So it works as an antenna. It works as an extension of an energy field to receive or to transmit energy. So within biogeometry, pendulums are used to test the qualities of energy. And I can't get into the details of this, but I do want to make an important distinction between the type of pendulum work that's done in biogeometry, which is called vibrational dowsing, in contrast to what is seen more often as mental dowsing, where people pick up a pendulum and start asking questions and wait to see which way the pendulum swings to give them an answer, yes or no, or maybe, or not now. These are the conventions in mental dowsing. But in vibrational dowsing, it's quite different, even though you're still using a pendulum. And the difference is that with vibrational dowsing, you learn how to tune into an object by changing the string length between the pendulum and your fingers. So that the string length is critical so that you come into resonance with whatever object you are wanting to test. So with vibrational dowsing, it's about getting into the vibrational field of something, and that's dependent upon the string length, because it's like a guitar string that's going to vibrate at a certain frequency. So when I change the length of the string, then it's going to be able to tune in to things at different frequencies. So that's kind of the long and short of how a pendulum is used in testing in biogeometry. And when it comes to biosignatures, for example, I have a book of dozens of biosignatures. And I have an index that lists all the different biosignatures for the different parts of the body, different conditions, and so forth. So I can sit with someone, take my antenna pendulum, change the string length until I come into resonance with their field, and then I can go through this list of different biosignatures until I get a positive resonance with one, and then we found a biosignature that's going to give them positive or beneficial quality of energy for their field that will enhance a particular thing. So, as I mentioned, I want to take a little look here at the biosignature for the heart. Here we're looking at one of the biosignatures. This is the shape for the heart. And I wanted to look at this one in particular because what do you notice about it? Well, there's quite a bit of vortexing action going on here. Loop-de-loop-de-loop-de-loop, loop-de-loop-de-loop-de-loop. Aha. This brings us to another important concept, which I'll get into in my book, and talking about the heart, because we're going to talk about the heart when we look at the Great Giza Pyramid, because the word pyramid literally means pyramid, fire in the middle, or fire in the heart. And well, it could be the heart, could be the belly, could be a combination of the two, actually. But the heart is an organ whose function is not just to pump blood. In fact, it isn't really pumping blood. It's, in a way, it stops the blood when it reaches the heart. It allows it to come in, and then it vortexes the blood. It vortexes the flow, not only of the blood, but the energy of the blood. It gets vortexed. Why? Again, so that what's going on below is a mirror of that which is above. So we can stay in tune with the fundamental signature of the cosmic intelligence, which is the spiral, which is the vortex. So heart at the center of our being has this form which creates a particular quality of energy, which is that of the vortex. Things come in and get vortexed, and then things sent out get vortexed. It's a double whammy for this flow of energy. It's so incredible.
Structuring our inner waters.
Yes, it's structuring our inner waters, exactly, which is why we structure our water here as well. So we're getting a double whammy, triple whammy, quadruple whammy to stay in tune with the fundamental quality of the cosmic intelligence, and thereby allow our consciousness to be an extension of the consciousness of the living universe. So for those of you there in Zoom, those of you that are watching this, you could actually draw this biosignature, put it on a piece of paper, put it in your pocket, keep it near you, put it by your bed when you're sleeping, or even draw it on your skin with a pen or a non-toxic marker. That's very common with people that are into biosignatures. When they douse one out, they'll draw it on their skin. Wash off in a day or two, and you can apply it again or put on a different biosignature. But what is it doing? It's a form. And when energy hits it, it has a shape cause wave that moves in a particular way that gives rise to a particular quality of energy. And that's going to invite more of that energy into your being. And this is the thing, we're taking in energy all the time, and a lot of it's not necessarily beneficial. A lot of it's detrimental, through our food, through the water, through the polluted air, through the noise. We're having an energy exchange with the environment all the time. So how to set it up so that we're in exchange with beneficial energies that are there. They're there even in the noise of the world, but then we're accessing out of the noise of the world particular qualities and inviting them into our own beingness. So yeah, you could take this biosignature, you can play with it and see for yourself, know for yourself if you sense any difference in your being and your well-being. Okay, well, this has been really great sharing this little piece with you on biogeometry. I'm really thankful for people that take an interest and show up, because it really has supported me in the research that I do and in understanding this stuff for myself, for my own well-being, but then sharing with other people, and then ultimately bring it into the repository of my book, which hopefully will reach an even larger audience in the recovery of lost technologies, and not just lost mechanical technologies, but the lost technologies, or the lost heka, these so-called magical powers that are available, that got lost through the march of time, that got lost as the Greeks took on this knowledge but became more materialistic with it, and we become more materialistic with it. But if we're really going to have a future for humanity, the pendulum has to swing back, and we have to embrace both sides of the coin at once. And the key is not materialistic science. The key is the human being, because the human being is the greatest device, is the greatest instrument for detecting these energies. The human has the capacity to know beyond any machine, beyond any computer. Sure, computers can compute very quickly and amass information together, but they can't be intuitive. They can't access from the cosmic intelligence. They can just mishmash data. So we really have to continue to look at the human as the key to the future, and to awaken fully to the powers that we're gifted with, and not be dumbed down, not be talked out by the forces that are actively opposing and working to keep this sort of knowledge out of the hands of people. And we do have to, smarten up in a lot of ways, because this power could be abused as well. And I'll finish off with a statement that Rudolf Steiner makes in his book, How to Know Higher Worlds. It's the 3-to-1 rule he refers to when he says that for every one step you make in increasing your power, acquiring more power through knowledge and practices, take 3 steps in the development of your character and of your moral nature and your ability to withstand temptation and the distractions and seductions of this world, of which there are many. That is the nature of the world, the Maya, the Matrix, the Isfet, Seth, Satan, who wants to oppose our harmonization with cosmic order or to live in maat. So with that, I wish you all the best in your future, the future of your humanity, and that you may find the knowledge and the steps so that you can also live in maat.